And so I woke up on a Thursday morning and the bank had stripped our account and then froze our line of credit. So we had a $7 million line at the time and that we used most of, and they froze it at 5.6 or 5.7 million. We didn't have enough to make payroll that week. And that was kind of my introduction to being the CEO of SharePoint. And about a week after that letter, so, lots of phone calls, we talked to the bank and they had agreed to give us enough to make payroll because we had never missed a payment. We'd never missed a principal or an interest payment. So I didn't understand why they would or how they could do what they did. I learned after about the covenants that we had. And I was freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't even going to take the CEO role. Now I took it. And I'm going to be the guy that bankrupt SharePoint. And that's where my head's going. My ego was flaring. And I don't know how to get through this. And about a week after we got the letter of forbearance, I woke up in the middle of the night. And instead of being deathly afraid like I had every other night that week, I was like, wait a minute, I've been looking at this all wrong. I knew that I needed to find a way to rally our team. We didn't use the word culture, but I knew that when we really cared about each other and the company, we did really well. And I knew that we rallied around crisis better than any company in the world. And I thought of it more from the perspective of if somebody's kid was sick in the Stollery Hospital. I use this example a lot. There was a family whose kid was sick in the Stollery, and they had to be with them for an extended period of time. And the team raised $8,000 in a day for that family, and gave them a bunch of cash. And so I was like, hey, we rally around crisis, great. I'm trying to find a way to rebuild the culture. There is no bigger crisis than this forbearance. The bank had given us 4.5 months or 4 months to inject a lot of money, find a new bank, or they were going to foreclose on us or call the DAC. I was like, there's no bigger crisis than we might not be around in 4.5 months. And so I actually was like, this is exactly what I've been praying for. And I coined it the gift of forbearance. And I got on the road that day and I went to every branch that week. And I went and talked to our technicians in the field. And I talked to people in the local towns and told them to bring their spouses and had coffee with them all. And I basically told them all the same thing. I said, hey, I'm Trev, I'm the new CEO and I'm way over my head. And I said, I'm going to need a lot of help. And then I said, and I'm really sorry that we screwed this up. I was one of the founders and I am so sorry. We didn't mean to, but I know it sucks here right now. And I'm going to do everything that I can to help change that. And then I said, and there's one more thing. Last week, we got a letter of forbearance and I don't know how to explain it other than it's really bad. And if we don't do a lot of things right in the next 4.5 months, there's going to be no more SharePoint. And I said, and I want you to know this so you can do the best thing or the right thing for you and your family. However, I hope you stay. I've decided to stay. And if you stay, I have no idea how we'll get through it. I just 100% know we will. And I promise you on the other side, we'll build a better culture than we've ever had. And almost everybody stayed. And then I went to our vendors because we had no money. And I brought our vendors in and I was told, do not tell your vendors you're in forbearance. And I brought them in and I said, hey, this is what happened. The bank did this. We broke our covenants. We don't have any money. That's why we're not paying you. We're working through it. We're SharePoint. We always pay our bills, but we got put in forbearance and this is what we're up against and we need your help. And most of them helped us. And I went to some of our clients and said, we need your help. Can you quick pay? Can you turn this invoice around and pay us $1 million in 3 days? And I remember one time I went to a lady of a company that we worked with, and they're an international company. I went to her in Edmonton and I said, can you get me this check? Can you get this approved and paid in the next 72 hours? And she's like, are you kidding me? This has to go to a VP out of Houston. And so I said, what's his name? And I called the guy and told him the story and said, we need your help. And I promised her, I said, if you get it to us in 72 hours, I will come to your office. I'll bring flowers and donuts and coffee for every woman in this office. And she had it ready for me. And I literally came in with boxes of flowers. And I realized something, that a few things. Give people permission to do the right thing. They will do the right thing. And the other thing was, I wanted to prove from that point on that caring was a competitive advantage, that you could actually give a shit about your team and the people, and that would be a competitive advantage in life, in business, and certainly in our industry. And we went all in on that. We rebranded ourselves. We made our foundational core value, we care. And we did things that, bring tears to my eyes when I think about it over the years. And what we did during the pandemic was, I think, epic. and really proved that we care and really proved that caring was a competitive advantage.
In a world filled with possibilities, one truth stands out. Everyone is a pathfinder in their own journey. Whether it's charting new territories in leadership, embracing the future with technology, or nurturing humanity, pathfinders are everywhere. Pathfinders, a platform built for everyone. We believe in the power of connection, the spark of curiosity, and the potential to inspire. Here we bring people together, not just as professionals, but as dreamers, thinkers, and change makers. Through engaging podcasts, thought-provoking digital conferences, and dynamic audio roundtables, and many more, we create spaces for meaningful conversations. We celebrate those who seek to understand, innovate, and lead. People like you. Pathfinders inspires. Pathfinders embraces technology. And above all, Pathfinders spreads a vision where leadership, innovation, and humanity converge to shape a better and brighter future. We are here to connect, to build bridges that transcend barriers, to share stories that matter, and to foster a community driven by passion and purpose. Be a part of this journey. Be a Pathfinder. Welcome to Pathfinders.
Hi, I'm Vijay Swaminathan. I'm the founder and CEO of Zadwell. At Zadwell, we help our clients transform into the digital space. We help from the web technologies to blockchain to Internet of Things and a wide range of services. Over the years, I can see the impact of technology that can have on business of all sizes. But I've also seen a gap in the market, a lack of quality support and outstanding technology solutions that truly meet the needs of the client. And that's where we come in. And ever since 2018, we started Zadwell. We've been helping more clients to digitally transform their business. We want to provide that personalized and dedicated support and care for our clients. And through this process, we want to see our clients thrive through the digital transformation process. At Zadwell, we work with a wide range of clients, from small businesses to startups to large enterprises and public sector companies. We have the experience and expertise to help you with your goals and an ever-changing technology landscape. So if you're looking for a technology partner who truly cares about your success, here we are. It's been an incredible journey so far, and I'm so excited to see where we'll go next. Let's get to work.
Hey everyone, welcome to Pathfinders. Today we have a new absolute special guest, Trevor Muir. Right? Did I say your name right, Trevor Muir?
Very, very close, Muir. Yeah.
Muir. So Trevor Muir, allow me to introduce you properly, Trevor, if you don't mind. Trevor is a people-first strategic leader with more than 30 years in the energy and technical services world. Starting out as a journeyman instrument mechanic and later helping grow ShowPoint Group from $4 million to over $100 million, he learned a simple truth. Culture isn't fluff, it's fuel. Trevor builds companies by grounding growth in vision, values, and genuine care. He believes transparency creates trust, ownership drives commitment, and authenticity is a real competitive advantage. He has led teams through downturns, forbearance, and a global pandemic, proving you can prioritize people without sacrificing performance. Beautiful. Love that, actually. Amazing. Among many other Trevor's highlights, it includes scaling the company to $100 million plus revenue, leading a private equity buyback program, designing a 30% employee-owned structure that strengthened culture and retention. He's an expert in employee ownership strategy as a tool for growth and alignment. And he has built a We Care culture that became the edge for the company. Today, he helps purpose-driven leaders grow their companies without losing the heart of what makes them great. Trevor, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on Pathfinders. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. And that was a really kind intro. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Trevor, where did it all start? How was the journey? How was the early days, even before to the $100 million and all of that? How did it start? Where were you born? How was the young Trevor like? Let's listen to your journey a little bit in your own words, please.
Yeah, you bet. I grew up on a farm in northern Alberta in a small community called Elmworth, and had a bit of land, and we raised some cows, and that's how I grew up. So I learned a lot of things in that community. I learned about caring for others, working hard, showing up. You get up in the morning and go out and feed the cows if it was minus 40 or if it was plus 40. And there was a whole bunch of things: resiliency, work ethic, and being there for others. And I really know that helped shape who I am today and kind of lead me down the path that I went on. I was always pretty curious, I guess, as a kid. I really thought that I remember I was 14 or 15 years old and sitting in an old house we were living in, and my grandpa, he did really well financially in business. And I was listening to the adults talk about life, and I can't remember if it was my grandpa or somebody asked me if I had any plans when I graduated, if I knew what I wanted to do. And for some reason, I just kind of blurted out. I said, well, I'm going to have my own company one day, and it's going to be successful, and I'm going to pay off my mortgage by 45 years old. And I didn't really know what a mortgage was, but I threw it out there. And I ended up going down this path. I graduated from high school. I was going to go to school and become a teacher, actually, which is something I very rarely talk about. And I had decided to take 6 months off. And so my dad said, well, if you're going to take 6 months off, go to work, and you might as well start off in a trade. And I got into it and got into instrumentation as a trade, and ended up, to be honest with you, to start with, I stayed with it because I was young and the money was really, really good. And then over time, as I continued to develop my craft, became a journeyman. It led me down this path, and I was quite entrepreneurial. I ended up having a number of businesses before SurePoint, but I had an opportunity when I was 32 years old to become
journeyman is not a word I frequently come across. Like, can you explain what a journeyman is?
Yeah, sorry. So a journeyman is somebody. It's a technical trade program. And so it's you go electricians, instrument mechanics, carpenters, all of the trades. You end up when you complete your training, your actual on-hands training and your schooling, you get a certificate called the journeyman certificate.
I see.
Or journey person now, I guess would be the right thing. And so I got my ticket in a trade, and it really gave me an opportunity to get into a business with SurePoint, and I took advantage of that. I jumped in. Me and 9 people, 9 of my friends came together, and there were 10 of us. We started SurePoint, and we started it as equal owners, 10% each, and everybody told us a recipe for disaster, and we did it anyway. And we started with 10 owners and 15 people in 2003, and today SurePoint's over 350 people. We went from 4 million to over 100 million, as you mentioned when you introduced me.
Wow. So what was it like? I mean, what was that like pivotal point, Trev? When was that age? Was it were you like 23 years old, 31 years old? When did you start SurePoint? Like, what was that tipping point? Okay, fine. I've accumulated enough experience as a journeyman, as an instrument mechanic, and you've done so many things in life. I'm sure there was some pivotal points in your life that you had to make some key decisions.
Yeah, I was probably flying by the seat of my pants more than anything at that time. I was young, and I tell people that there's a fine line between, courage and insanity or recklessness. And I walked it pretty tight. I had started my own company. I left a really, really good job and started my own company. I still own it. It's a company called Matrix Measurement. And I had started it before I joined SurePoint. And I was running around in a truck with my tools, and I had one person working for me and was doing pretty well. And so when SurePoint came in and offered me the opportunity, I was either going to expand my own business or I was going to partner with somebody. And so came in with those folks. And it was really a Cinderella story in the beginning. Like I said, 15 of us started this thing, or we had 15 people, 10 of us started it. And we went from $4 million to over $50 million in 5 years. And we went from 15 people to 250 people. So in 2008, we started to get a lot of interest. We got a lot of exposure. We ended up in a magazine, Alberta Venture. And we were one of the top, we were the third fastest growing company in Alberta that had under $20 million. So we had just hit around 20 million. That got us a lot of exposure. And so we got a lot of interest in investing. And we ended up selling in 2008 to a private equity group out of the US. And so we sold 60% of the business. And 2008, for those who don't know, in the oil and gas industry, the bottom fell out about 3 months after the PE invested in us. It ended up, oil dropped from $80 to, well, there was a period of time, I think it was $30 or maybe a little bit less for a while. And so everything kind of came to a screeching halt. At SurePoint, we continued to grow through that period. We actually went from 55 million-ish in 2008. By 2012, we were over $90 million in top line revenue. And it sounds good, except it was really terrible. Culturally, we were disintegrating. We were losing money at $92 million. And we were losing a whole bunch of really good people. We were having cash flow issues. And in 2013, one of the board members from the private equity group reached out to me. I was actually in Australia. We had started a branch over there. I had started one for SurePoint. And I got a call from one of the board members saying that they were going to make a change to the CEO position. And I said, I think that's probably a good idea. And they offered me the CEO role. And I was like, no, I had actually given notice to our CEO and COO. I was going to leave and start another business. And so I said, I'm done in a week or like couple weeks. I said, I gave notice. And I said, no, thank you. I flew back to Canada and I told my wife that they offered me the CEO role. And she said, do not take it. Whatever, don't take it. I know what this means. You don't have to do this.
She knows.
And she's like, I'll never see you again. And it's kind of crappy there and go do one thing. And I said, well, that's fine. I already turned it down. And a couple of days later, they called me back again and asked me to reconsider. I came home and told my wife and I said, but I've already turned it down. And she was happy to hear that. And then that night she asked me something that really changed everything. She said, I don't want you to take it, but how will you feel if you don't? And I said, well, here's the problem I'm having. That was the struggle I was having. I said, I'm a tradesperson. I don't know how to be a CEO, especially of a company this big that's having some financial trouble. I said, but in 2008, when we sold, I was grateful, but I felt like something was missing. And I talked about it often. I didn't really celebrate it. And I said, the day after we sold, 10 of our lives changed financially and our families' lives, but 240 other people woke up the next day and nothing had changed for them. The only thing they could hope for is that the new owners treated them at least as good as we did. And I said, now the company's in some trouble. A lot of really good people quit really good jobs to come here. And many of them did because I told them we were better and we were different. And we were. And now arguably we're maybe worse. And I said, I'm always going to wonder if I could have made a difference. And the only reason I'm turning it down is out of fear and the fact that I don't have to do it. Like I could sit on the couch for a couple of years. And I said, I'll always wonder if I could have helped. And so I made a decision to take the CEO role. And so in 2013, I became the CEO of SurePoint.
Got it. I mean, I'm 41 years old right now. They say life begins at 40. So I'm 1 year old technically. I observe a lot of things in terms of like how certain things operate, how society works. And through the pandemic, you had a lot of free time. So I had a lot of like thinking heads going on, trying to absorb a lot, learn a lot. And I've lived through 4 countries myself. This is my 4th. So we became citizens in Canada recently.
Congratulations.
Love Alberta, Edmonton. It's fantastic. So all kudos to I mean, I kind of pulled Alberta. It kind of pulled. The first time I saw it, the kind of the work ethic, it was minus 45. I was walking to my client's office in downtown Edmonton. I was flying back and forth between Ontario and Alberta at the time. So I used to live in a single bedroom apartment in downtown. So it was minus 30, 40, 42 or something. And it was like any other day. People walking by, having their Tim Hortons coffee on, and wow, I mean, that takes a lot of grit. I don't know what words can be fill it. So, but I kind of love that energy coming from Alberta. It kind of pulled us, and my wife liked it too. So we moved here for good. So, but also at the same time, I'm also cautiously observing different companies, corporations globally, whether like the Wall Street or the Bay Area companies. I'm from the tech world. I'm not like, is it a black or is it a white? I'm probably looking at both sides, and maybe there's also a gray that people are also ignoring. And somewhere along the way, Trevor, I'm feeling that many of these corporations, I mean, there's a lot of marketing around it, the best place to work and whatnot. All these titles or the labels doesn't mean actually anything. If you want to go really know what's happening in the company, go read the Glassdoor reviews and so many other things. Somewhere along the way, I think capitalism is great, but also it has its flaws. That's what I'm realizing. The root intention of some of these companies are not set at the right tone or the right place. They all start with great, even including Google. I'm not taking a dig at them. Don't be evil, right? That was their pure motto like years ago when they started. I'm not sure if they still follow that, but I would love for them to get back to it. So why do you see that the intention of the company getting lost? Is it because of the VC money, or is it what changes the path for the company?
So for SharePoint, and I'll speak specifically for it, I want to say something else. So I believe, and I'm a capitalist at heart. I've founded 20 companies. I believe, making money is good. I am all about that. I also believe that the number one purpose of any organization, the primary purpose, should be to help people improve their lives. And the reason that I believe that is because I believe if you actually put that as your main intention and you get that right, and it's hard to get right and it's not perfect, but if you do it and you get it right, that your company will outperform all others in the market that you're in over a longer period of time because of retention and because of happy team, which also has an impact on their families. Because I know when we were struggling financially and culturally, it was bad. I surely wasn't showing up at home as the best version of myself, and neither were our teammates. And so I believe if you put that as an intention, then good, you can do good to do good is what I like to say. Now, I believe this. I believe that you're never going to get a CEO or an owner or somebody on a board of a company come and say that people don't matter.
Right.
They will all say,
they never say that.
They will all say the same thing. We care about our people. They're our number one priority. And I actually believe that they believe that at the minimum, they believe they want to have that. And somewhere along the line, and I do believe that, with capitalism, there's a shift and so many things. The main ROI of any organization isn't how many people you keep. Usually it's how much money you make, and return on investment is important. I think that people get lost along the way. And oftentimes I believe that as leaders, when we start to get elevated in organizations or go and get MBAs or you get fancy titles, that I think fear drives some of it. Sometimes there's such a focus on how do we make sure that this makes as much money as possible that we lose the humanity part of it. And I tell people I had a major advantage. When I took over as the CEO of SharePoint in 2013, I had very little business acumen. I could kind of read a P&L, but not really well. I didn't know about balance sheets. I didn't know how to read it. I didn't know about banking agreements. I had a poor understanding of working capital management, all of those things. And we were in financial distress big time. And I tell people kind of half jokingly, especially my friends with MBAs, I said I had a major advantage. I wasn't smart enough to go to Harvard and get an MBA. And that actually ended up being, I think, something that helped save us. I had to go with my heart and my head. I had to go with people first, because 10 weeks after I became the CEO, we got a letter of forbearance from the bank. And I didn't know what that meant. But what it meant was we had broken a bunch of our financial covenants. And so I woke up on a Thursday morning and the bank had stripped our account and then froze our line of credit. So we had a $7 million line at the time, and that we used most of. and they froze it at 5.6 or 5.7 million. We didn't have enough to make payroll that week. And that was kind of my introduction to being the CEO of SharePoint. And about a week after that letter, so, lots of phone calls. We talked to the bank and they had agreed to give us enough to make payroll because we had never missed the payment. We'd never missed the principal or an interest payment. So I didn't understand why they would or how they could do what they did. I learned after about the covenants that we had. And I was freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, I wasn't even going to take the CEO role. Now I took it. And I'm going to be the guy that bankrupt SharePoint. And that's where my head's going. My ego is flaring. And I don't know how to get through this. And about a week after we got the letter of forbearance, I woke up in the middle of the night. And instead of being like deathly afraid like I had every other night that week, I was like, wait a minute, I've been looking at this all wrong. I knew that I needed to find a way to rally our team. We didn't use the word culture, but I knew that when we really cared about each other and the company, we did really well. And I knew that we rallied around crisis better than any company in the world. And I thought of it more from the perspective of if somebody's kid was sick in the Stollery hospital. I use this example a lot. There was a family whose kid was sick in the Stollery, and they had to be with them for an extended period of time. And the team raised $8,000 in a day for that family and gave them a bunch of cash. And so I was like, hey, we rally around crisis, great. I'm trying to find a way to rebuild the culture. There is no bigger crisis than this forbearance. The bank had given us 4.5 months or 4 months to inject a lot of money, find a new bank, or they were going to foreclose on us or call the debt. I was like, there's no bigger crisis than we might not be around in 4.5 months. And so I actually was like, this is exactly what I've been praying for. And I coined it the gift of forbearance. And I got on the road that day and I went to every branch that week and I went and talked to our technicians in the field. And I talked to people in their local towns and told them to bring their spouses and had coffee with them all. And I basically told them all the same thing. I said, hey, I'm Trev, I'm the new CEO and I'm way over my head. And I said, I'm going to need a lot of help. And then I said, and I'm really sorry that we screwed this up. I was one of the founders and I am so sorry. We didn't mean to, but I know it sucks here right now. And I'm going to do everything that I can to help change that. And then I said, and there's one more thing. Last week, we got a letter of forbearance and I don't know how to explain it other than it's really bad. And if we don't do a lot of things right in the next 4 or 4.5 months, there's going to be no more SharePoint. And I said, and I want you to know this so you can do the best thing or the right thing for you and your family. However, I hope you stay. I've decided to stay. And if you stay, I have no idea how we'll get through it. I just 100% know we will. And I promise you on the other side, we'll build a better culture than we've ever had. And almost everybody stayed. And then I went to our vendors because we had no money. And I brought our vendors in and I was told, do not tell your vendors you're in forbearance. And I brought them in and I said, hey, this is what happened. The bank did this. We broke our covenants. We don't have any money. That's why we're not paying you. And we're working through it. We're SharePoint. We always pay our bills, but we got put in forbearance and this is what we're up against. And we need your help. And most of them helped us. And I went to some of our clients and said, we need your help. Can you quick pay? Can you turn this invoice around and pay us $1 million in 3 days? And I remember one time I went to a lady of a company that we worked with, and they're an international company. I went to her in Edmonton, and I said, can you get me this check? Can you get this approved and paid in like the next 72 hours? And she's like, are you kidding me? Like, this has to go to a VP out of Houston. And so I said, what's his name? And I called the guy and told him the story and said, we need your help. And I promised her, I said, if you get it to us in 72 hours, I will come to your office. I'll bring flowers and donuts and coffee for every woman in this office. And she had it ready for me. And I literally came in with boxes of flowers. And I realized something, that a few things: give people permission to do the right thing. They will do the right thing. And the other thing was, I wanted to prove from that point on that caring was a competitive advantage. You could actually give a shit about your team and the people, and that would be a competitive advantage in life, in business, and certainly in our industry. And we went all in on that. We rebranded ourselves. We made our foundational core value, we care. And we did things that bring tears to my eyes when I think about it over the years. And what we did during the pandemic was, I think, epic, and really proved that we care and really proved that caring was a competitive advantage.
Right. No, I mean, like, what a distress you have gone through. And I've heard like some bits of like your struggle sessions and what you have gone through and whatnot. Like, somewhere along the way, I'm a capitalist too. I think capitalism is one of the ways that can lift people out of poverty. But at the same time, when there's these giant corporations, that becomes a machine, Trevor, that gives them too much power in the society. They can actually make things or break things. I mean, try calling any of the big telecom company or some of the big things. I'm not against them actually, but at the same time, when they behave like a machine, that and then they and value as if their time is worth more than the person reaching out to them, I don't like it actually.
Yeah, I don't think anyone does except the shareholders.
Yeah,
and the few, and there's a few. Yeah.
Yeah. And because I think society, in a way, the question I go back, I try to find truth, like, where is it happening? What is it happening? Is it capitalism or socialism? It's not actually. I mean, capitalism is fantastic. I'm with the people who are starting the business, who have an idea, who are betting their lives on it. There's the small business owners or the mid-sized business owners who still have the heart and the soul that you're speaking about. I'm with those people, actually. I'm not with the billions of dollars. Hey, have $10 billion. Let's go capture a city. I'm not with them, actually, because that's actually disrupting 10,000 lives over there who are small business owners in a way. But when banks have that kind of a power over society, I think the society has given these banks to operate like that. That sickens me, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating and disheartening. And I believe that, and I say this sincerely, I believe that the majority of leaders of organizations in the world truly care. The problem is, I believe that it's not even so much ego and overconfidence oftentimes. When you're at this stake in the road where you have to choose, where you get to make a choice to choose people or profit, especially when it's hard, the risk is this. If you choose people and it doesn't work, you're going against the book. You're going against all rationale, everything that you're taught, that you conserve capital, that you do all of these things, and that's how you survive it. And so, intuitively and intellectually and logically, those are the things you do. If you go this way and you pick the other path that very few leaders pick and it doesn't work out, it can be career suicide for you, to be honest with you. And there's a fear in that. You get to a certain level or a certain place in your life. And this is the other thing. These people who are leading organizations and making tens or hundreds of millions of dollars a year are still human beings. There's a status that comes with it. There's an economic advantage, massive economic advantage. There's a lifestyle that comes with all of this, just like for every one of us in any role that we have. And there's still the same kind of fears and insecurities. And so I believe that oftentimes leaders want to do what I call the right thing and look after people. But the reality is, if you do that and it doesn't work out, it can be the end of a career for some of these people, especially at the level they're at. And when we went into the pandemic, and I know you know this part of this story, so in 2018, we had the opportunity to buy SharePoint back. And I went to 15 of our employees at that time and asked them if they wanted to buy it back. I had no intention of ever buying it back. But when the PE group said they were putting it up for sale, I was like, hey, let me talk to some of the team. And all 15 said yes. So December of 2018, we bought SharePoint back. And I told those people that we were bringing in, I said, there's one caveat. The only way I'll do it, I'll reinvest in this again and give it one more go. But the only way I'll do it is if you're all open to us to becoming an employee-owned organization. And they all said yes. So we were starting with the 15 so that we could, get some stuff figured out and build the employee share ownership program. And so we buy the thing back. It's a pretty good year. We took a lot of debt on. We got some help from a private equity group out of Alberta that really helped us a lot, and a private investor to pull this deal together. And 2019's not too bad. You're not great, but 2020 is supposed to be a boomer year for us. And April of 2020 was supposed to be the biggest month we had ever had in the history of the company. And March 2020, the pandemic hits. And I mean, the wheel comes off the world. Everybody's in panic, and for good reason. And so here we are again. I'm back in panic mode, full of fear, trying to figure out how do we get through this. And I was a part of a lot of peer groups, a lot from Edmonton, actually, with some really good business leaders. Virtually, we're on all these calls, and there was a common theme: how do you survive the pandemic? How are we going to get through this? And the common theme was conserve capital, reduce costs. And in most organizations, that meant laying people off. And you could lay people off, and they could get $2,000 served from the government, which could help, but it's really not a lot of money. And so we are having this dilemma, like, what do we do? And we're looking and we're expecting that our revenue might drop by 40%, and then it ended up dropping by about 60%. However, we made a list of people, and we kind of agonized about it, and we had a list of people we were going to let go, and we finished it on a Friday. It took us about 2 weeks to put this together. And we decided that on the Monday, we were going to start letting people go. And Friday night, I called our one VP and our CFO about 7:00 at night, I think it was. And I said, don't let anyone go. I said, don't let anyone go next week. And they really were shocked. And I said,
Right.
here's the thing. I said, we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know if it's going to last 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. We don't know if half the people are going to die or everyone's going to die or no one's going to die. We do know this. We're telling people they have to stay at home. They can't go and see their parents. They can't go hang out with their friends and have beers with them. They can't go on dates. The kids can't swipe on Tinder. Like nothing is normal. I said, and we also know this. We say we care. We are never going to get a better opportunity to prove it than right now. And we have an advantage. We have a playbook to go back to. In 2013, we were screwed. We should have went bankrupt. And we went to the team, told them the truth and asked them for help. And they helped us. And I said, so we're going to do this. We're going to have a town hall on Monday, and we're just going to tell everyone the truth. We're going to say, we have a list of people that we're going to lay off, and we decided we're not going to lay off anyone yet. We are going to keep as many people as we can, right, for as long as we can, and we're going to try and get everybody through this. However, if it looks like we're on the edge and we're going to fall off the cliff, and we'll run it as tight as we can, we'll have a town hall a week or two beforehand, and everybody will know that there's going to be layoffs coming. And so we ended up rallying around that pretty good. However, a lot of our people weren't getting paid anything because they're hourly staff, and they only get paid if they get called out to work. So we started to have a few folks ask for layoffs so that they could get the CERB money. And I can't remember how long it was into the pandemic, but not very long before the government came out with the Canadian Wage Subsidy Program. And I remember when I found out that we qualified for it, I was sitting in my home office and I literally had a napkin and a pen. And I was like, what if we did something that's never been done before? And I wrote this plan out. What if we guaranteed everyone a paycheck? And I called our CFO all excited. And I was like, hey, what if we guarantee everyone a paycheck? What if we give every first year apprentice $2,500 minimum, and every second year $3,000, and third year $3,500, and fourth year $4,000, and journeyman $5,000? If they go to work more in the field and are billable, we'll pay them more, but everyone gets that as a minimum. And he said, that's such a great idea. However, we can't afford it. And I said, well, I think we can. I showed him the napkin. I mapped it out. I think we can. And he said, I don't know. And I said, okay, all I need you to do is tell me if we can figure out a way that you'll support it, because I want to go to the board with this. And they're going to call you right away. And he said, yeah, if we can figure out a way, I support it. So I got a hold of the board, same conversation, same response. And they said, if you can figure out a way, then we'll support it. And so I got about 25 of our leaders on a call virtually. And I said, hey, we're keeping all our people because we care. And we're all like, yeah, we're so different. We're awesome. And I said, how do you feel about us guaranteeing everybody a paycheck? And I told them the plan, $2,500 to $5,000. And it's the easiest thing in the world to say yes to. Everyone's like, yeah, this is awesome. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate that. But there's one problem. We can't afford it. I said, the way that we're structured, we cannot afford it. And what I'm about to ask might be the most meaningful thing that you ever do in your career. And everyone is going to have to sacrifice, and it's not going to be fair at all. Some are going to have to sacrifice more than others. And I said, if anybody says no, we're going to spend some time talking about this. And if anybody says no for any reason, you can't afford it or don't want to, we'll leave here. We all have to be in, or else we can't do this. And if anybody says no, it's a safe space, we will leave here and we'll find a different way through the pandemic. And I said, here's what I'm about to propose. I'm willing to give up 50% of my pay for the duration of the wage subsidy program if necessary. So everybody knew how much I made. And I said in that room or on that call, and I said, everybody has to come down to that number. So if you're $1 over that, or you're $30,000 over that, you have to come down to that number. And the significance of this is important to share. Our managers and general managers gave up 15 to 20% of our pay. Our two VPs and our CFO gave up 35% of their pay, and I gave up 50% of mine. And all of these people outside of me are in their 30s or maybe touching 40. They have kids, they have SUVs, they have houses, they have way too much shit, but they have it. And it took less than 30 minutes for everybody to agree to that. And then the rest of the company gave up 10% of their pay so that we could keep everybody and guaranteeing paychecks. And we did that for 7.5 months. And Cam and I, our CFO, we did it for 9 months. We came through that pandemic and we were like out of cash again. And it was really, really hard. And I spent some time thinking, oh my God, did we do the right thing? And then we had an opportunity to buy a small competitor and merge them in. And we got board approval. We raised a bit of money. We tucked this thing in. That gave us a little bit of energy. It started to get out what we had done as we're coming out of the pandemic. It started to get out and we did so many things around We Care. We did things for our communities that were just mind blowing. We did things for our team. We did team building events. We had a Master Chef cooking class that went for 42 weeks, and we professionally published a cookbook and sold all the copies and gave it to Santa YEG in Edmonton. And we showed up and made soup and sandwiches with them, 20 of us, and we went and handed them out to the folks that are on the streets there in Edmonton. And we did all this amazing stuff. We had a magical Christmas with SharePoint. We had Matt Core, a comedian magician, do a virtual show. We opened it up for free to the world for 2 years. There were over 10,000 viewers that came into that. So we were doing all this stuff, and it got out, bought this company. We're talking about rolling out the employee share ownership plan because we'd held off on it till we knew we were going to survive the pandemic. And we had this energy, and we ended the year with the combined companies, the one that we bought in SharePoint at about 46 million. The next year we grew to 98 million organically. We started to hire people. It got out, and at a time where it was hard to find tradespeople, we just became this magnet for them. And we hired 125 people in 9 months. I think we hired 175 that year and 125 in a short period of time. And it was absolute chaos. And it put us in a massive spin again. We ran out of working capital again. There was a lot of challenges to it. We had to stop hiring people because we couldn't afford to add anymore. And we were onboarding people that needed to onboard people, but we got through it. And the next year we did $125 million. And we rolled out the employee share ownership program, and it was a huge success. We had 130 participants a year or two ago. The employees on 30% are just maybe a little bit better than 30% of the company now. And so I'm very, very proud of what we did. And we did things that weren't conventional.
Yeah. Now, I think doing the right thing, it's not just a number thing, because I think it is a heart and mind coming together and making the right decision. And through all this, I mean, there are so many amazing leaders, I'm sure, along with you and your company. So it's beyond the leadership quotes and the titles that all people go through, actually. So what is a leader, Trevor? Because you've gone through a lot. Leadership is not just about the 7 great habits of a leader or something like that. There are so many amazing things about being a leader itself, right? So what defines a leader, actually, in your own words?
So for me, I think that there's a lot of ways to lead, and there's a lot of definitions for leadership. I believe that the leaders of the future that are going to be the most effective will be servant leaders. It's the ones who are showing up for their team. It's the ones who are going to put people first. And there is an absolute necessity for structure in an organization and financial, acumen and understanding and managing cash flow and managing costs and doing that. However, I believe that heart-centered leaders and the ones that show up as servant leadership styles are going to actually be the most successful in future generations. And I've been able to witness it. And so we did something that was actually, looking back, quite risky. And I remember we were having conversations in the leadership group. And I said, we're going so far against the grain from, the vast majority of organizations here by really keeping the people. And we were not in a position to be able to do that. Financially, it was a huge risk. And I said, I always said, do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And I believe the universe will honor that. And it did for us, thankfully. However, there was a lot of fear amongst our leaders when we did this. And I said, well, here's the thing. If it doesn't work out, it's a pandemic. People expect us to fail. So the risk to our careers was less. And I also had another advantage. I had never had aspirations to be the CEO of a company. It was never, I was never like, man, that's what I want to do. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity, and for the right opportunity and the right organization, I would absolutely consider it again. But it would have to be for all the right reasons and check all the boxes, because to me, that wasn't the most important thing. The title didn't matter that much, and it never had throughout my entire career. And when I showed up in the leadership style I did, I didn't know most of the things that I needed to know to be successful, but I had a team of people who rallied, and I mean rallied around me and supported me as much as I supported them. And I think that is leadership. When you show up and you bring your technical skill and your experience into an organization, into a level, and then you let the team do what they do best, and you are there to support them, you will also find out that they're there to support you. Because I would have failed miserably 100 times if it wasn't for the team. I made some terrible mistakes as a leader that cost us money, took us down some crazy paths, and the team always rallied and pulled us back to center. And I believe that's what leadership is.
So when you completely change the script from like people over profit or putting people first, the we care culture that you actually created, what were some of the responses that you got from the people itself, from the company? I'm sure you would have got like, Trevor, thank you. I mean, you would have heard so many amazing stories, I'm sure. Like, what are some of them that you want to bring it to light?
There are so many, and I still get people. I'll be in a grocery store in Leduc or Edmonton, and I'll see somebody that worked for us during that period of time, the pandemic, or right after we were going through forbearance, and they will come and hug me. We built these incredible relationships and friendships, and there's so many. I would get so many emails. I sent out lots of messages during that period of time. I sent a Christmas message it's got crazy now. I sent an individual text or email to over 550 people on Christmas Day. I love Christmas, by the way. It's my favorite thing. And we have a rule in my house that I'm not allowed to wake anyone up till 5:30 in the morning on Christmas morning. And I'm like, right. I'm waiting. Because I'm like 5:31. I'm right. But I started this early on, and I would send with our team, I'd send a Merry Christmas to them through text, and that thing's growing to be big. And I get so many people now who try to beat me, and through Christmas and any of the holidays, people that work for SurePoint and continue to send me messages and so many thank yous for the things that we did and the decisions that we made. And I say thank you back. Like it was really it was really a time for me too I have extreme gratitude for it, for all the love and support that I got through it as well. But there are things that the team did that absolutely, like, legitimately will bring tears to your eyes if when I think about it and talk about it. And when we did We Care Days, and the way that the team rallied and went out into the communities, and some of the families that they showed up for, it was absolutely amazing.
Right. One other question I want to ask you about raising money, and many of the founders that are meeting, discussing, and even some of the ventures that we have started, like, it's all bootstrapped. We haven't raised money consciously yet, but sometimes it scares me also. Maybe it's a fear of the unknown, but I would ask experts like you who have gone through that path like multiple times. Is one thing is about, like, I'm a super aspirant of like freedom. And I think freedom means a lot to me more than anything else, because I think what else you got? Because, like, surrendering yourself, I'm very pathetic at taking instructions from anybody. I've seen that through my entire corporate life. I cannot take instructions, right? I tell that to my wife. I struggle at, like, submitting to instructions. Okay, fine. I will submit to one person, maybe to God, but I believe in God. But I really struggled when it comes to VC money. It's a kind of I don't know how much of the company you're giving away. While you're giving away 30% or 50%, or how much of the ownership, because money to me, it actually means a lot. Also, it doesn't mean anything. That's what I understood when I studied money, because it's created out of thin air, right? A US dollar has appreciated 97% right now. What's the cost of a US dollar, right? Well, you can see the price when every time you're buying beef or steak at Costco, you can see what's the cost of money. What used to cost like $10 is now $60, $70. So it's actually depreciating, right, in a way. So just giving away because someone dropped $100,000 or $200,000 and giving up freedom to some person who doesn't care about money as much. So how do you see that? Because, like, I think the modern day founders and startup owners actually, they struggle with this concept. And how much should we take? And how do we retain control and at the same time not give up the freedom? Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think that raising money as a small company and a bootstrap company, depending on the industry you're in, it's very, very hard. Most of the companies that I go in, I do coaching and mentoring and advising now for a number of companies, and they're anywhere from $5 million to $25 million. And it is really, really hard for those companies to raise equity or to even get significant bank financing. A lot of times because they don't have the systems and processes. And when you're talking about service companies or sort of commodity product offerings, the margins are not really, really that good. the scalability is all around systems, processes, and can you attract the right people into your organization, which in lots of companies, the cash comes way after. In some industries, you're paying all the bills up front and you're getting your money in 60 days and low margin. So when you're talking to organizations like that, and the number one challenge that I find in these organizations is working capital management. They run out of cash, even if they're profitable. And oftentimes because they take on so much work and they're not structured proper for it and they don't have the funding. And so when you're talking about tech companies and now going into this AI space, and you're talking about these ones that have the potential for explosive growth with really, really high margins. So when you're going in and you're saying, okay, well, I know that I can do this, and for 2 years, I'm really not going to make any money. But once it goes out, the scalability of the product it's a repeatable thing. It sells, margins are really, really high. And we figured out a way to take this thing and reach 1 million people in 2 years, and we make $50 a person, and it's recurring revenue. Those models are way different. And so I always say, even when somebody comes to me and talks about selling their business, the first thing I ask is why. Or when they come to me and say, come and help me, I want to grow my business. The first thing I say, okay, yeah, no, I'm interested for sure. I'd like to come have a coffee and check it out and give you some guidance. And the first thing I ask them is why? Why do you want to do it? Why do you want a venture capitalist is what I would ask the person. And it's funny, the answers that I get. I often get, I want to grow the company and I want to have more freedom and I want to, have the money to do the things that I want with my family, and I want to look after my family, and I don't want to be stressed and all of those things. And I'll say, well, so right now, some of them they make good money. They can make $1 million a year. They're working pretty hard, but they can go to their kids' hockey game most of the time if they want. And I say, if you want to scale your business, I don't care if it's electrical instrumentation business or you're in some sort of tech play, you're going to work your ass off. And if you have venture capital money or other people's money and a significant amount of it, you don't have freedom. And it doesn't matter how much of the company you give up. You lose your freedom for a period of time. You lose your flexibility for a period of time. Your stress gets more for a period of time. And so I always say, understand why. For me, growing SurePoint was about impacting and empowering more people. And so it was all about our whole purpose, our core purpose, or compelling why was to empower people and improve lives. And so I was like, I want to grow this thing big and get 4 or 5 or 6 or 700 people, because that means we impact more lives. I never once thought it was going to be easier than running 20 people or 30 people. I didn't think it was going to give me more freedom. I thought at some point the economic benefit would be really, really good for me as well as others. So I would ask, the first thing I would say is why. And then once you understand why, and you can clearly define why you want to do it, then you go in, and that changes how you go to them, how much you're willing to give up. If this is, I want to scale this thing fast and get it really big as fast as possible, maybe you give up 70 or 80% if you can get the right team and the right amount of capital to just scale the shit out of it. If it's, I want to build this thing and I want my kids to be able to work in this in 20 years, it's a totally different conversation.
Got it. Yeah, I know that's because I keep thinking about it in terms of I look at shows like Shark Tank, and I haven't watched Dragon's Den as much, but I've seen a lot of Shark Tank episodes and things. I mean, amazing ideas actually. I mean, even when we look at something that we that haven't used like DoorDash or Swiggy, I mean, we can create it in a couple of months. Swiggy, we got it. We can create it. DoorDash, we can create it. But it only scales if you infuse $10 million into it. The marketing is a bigger play in all of these products, actually. That's what we are realizing. It's not even the idea. So the idea is great, but actually, if you have the marketing budget to actually put it in front of billions of eyes, or millions of eyes, that's when you actually see the market convert and people start buying into the idea and start using it. Which is a challenge for many startups, I can tell. How do we address that gap, Trevor? Because once we thought the idea was noble, but now it's that we can get it done. Swiggy or DoorDash or many of concepts, or Uber, for instance, all of that we could actually get it done. I'm not just talking about tech, but even otherwise. So how do we address the gap of because there are so many startups and many of them actually fail. 1% of startups fail. So how do we increase the success ratio of many of these startups? What do you think would work?
So I'm going to ask you a question on that. Why do you believe 98? Because I know the numbers are staggering, but why do you believe they fail? 8%, why do you believe they fail?
It's not that the founders are not working hard enough, or they're not hustling enough, or they're not reaching out. I don't see that as a reason, because I don't know. It could be multiple. It's who they know and how much money they were able to raise. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out the reason. Actually, I don't know.
I have an opinion on it because I've had some businesses that didn't work out, and I had bootstrapped every business.
Right.
So, just one sec, please.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So I have had some businesses that didn't work out, and all of the businesses that I've ever gone into has been startups basically and bootstrap. And I believe that, whatever it is, whatever your product is or whatever you're trying to sell, the market's just not there, and you don't really know that sometimes until you try to go it. Or if you talk tech plays, there's giants that can keep you out of it. But I believe that the biggest reason why most companies fail, and I believe this, and I could probably prove it, is people give up. Like,
right.
Because the reason why is because it's so hard. And I said, of all the companies that I've been a part of, the ones that failed was me and or the partner, or the partners, the key partners, or myself gave up. We just were like, it's not worth it anymore. And we went and did something else. And it's because I don't care what company you start. And there's a few, I've heard some success stories of some companies that, come out with something and they get the VC money and it's like, bam. But I think there's a saying, it takes 20 years to become an overnight success. And
that's right.
The reality is, whatever you're doing, there's very few VCs that are going to give money to somebody with an idea or a concept, because those are easy. They'll more give money to somebody who has said, I have been grinding this out and I'm not giving up on it. I am working a job 9 to 5, but I'm working this job from 5 to 9 and 9 till midnight. Like
24/7 endeavor, actually. It's not even 9 to 5. It's
down in my basement, or I'm in my garage and I'm hustling. And I took 6 months off and focused on it. And I used every dollar of my line of credit and I maxed out my visa. And then I went back to work on a shovel for 3 months to raise money again. And then as soon as I got a bit of money again, and just enough to pay the visa off and make sure that, that my spouse wasn't going to kick me out onto the street, I went and worked on it, gave it all my all again. And in my experience, and the businesses that I have even done, and the things that I have gone into where I've invested money on my own, it's like, it's hard. And I'm like, that is so hard. And now I'm at a point, and I think that financial comfort actually kills a lot of companies as well. Because when you got nothing and you're like, I'm going for this because I don't want to work for a wage for the rest of my life, like, you got grit. I have invested what would have been a life-changing amount of money to me at one time. I've invested into something I was going to try, and 6 or 8 months later been like, yeah, this is hard. And I just walk away from it because, and I lose the money, but I'm like, I can go and put my attention and effort into this and make the money back over the next 18 months or 2 years. When I was young and hungry, if I put $30,000 into something, I would be like, I am going to work literally 20 hours a day to make this work because I have to. And so I don't believe it's a lack of funding. Sometimes there are things that happen in organizations. The pandemic wiped out a lot of companies. Margins aren't good in a business. Lots of restaurants go out of business. And it's not because then those people work their asses off, but the margins are so slim and you have to have the right demographic. But most businesses fail because of that. And I believe if you want to get venture capital money or you want to get investment, you go and you show that you have hustled, that this is the thing you are not going to give up until this is successful, with or without them. And there's this idea often with entrepreneurs that you can't start a business without some money. And I say that's not true. You can't. It's way harder, but the hard is actually part of the process. The struggle to get the money, the struggle to earn the money is part of what develops you. And I spoke about this. It came to me a few years ago about goal setting, because I would beat myself up when I didn't accomplish the goal. And I can be pretty hard on myself, even though I inspire others not to be. And I realized something hit me. The main part of a goal, the primary benefit of a goal is not attaining the goal. It's becoming the person you need to be that can attain the goal. And I think back to when I became the CEO of SharePoint, forbearance is actually the best thing that ever happened for me in my career. It forced me to my knees. It made me humble. And I had to learn about P&Ls, balance sheet, bank covenants, working capital management, debt, equity ratios, about how to actually structure an organization. And the universe was preparing me to become a leader that could keep up with the pace to go to $125 million. And the pain is part of the process. And so I actually think, and I've heard horror stories of these people who've started these companies and they've fallen into a gold mine of money or into a pit of money with a VC. And a year later or 18 months later, they're broke. The company is gone. And I'm like, I believe it wasn't hard enough. Like, I don't know if that's going to be popular or not, but it's if it comes too easy, and you have to learn how to run a business, and you have to learn how to grow a business, and you have to learn how to manage without money, and you have to learn how to take heartache and disappointment and absolute terrorizing fear and laying in the basement in the fetal position and thinking that you just can't go on, and then getting up the next day and doing it all over again. That's all part of the process to becoming successful.
One thing that we also speak in our authentic hustle, in other conversations I've had with the founders and entrepreneurs, is like, it's sometimes also a very lonely journey because you have to make endless decisions for yourself, for your company. There are not so many people you can actually reach out to for the decision that you're looking for. It gets lonely at the top. It's not said. Like, it's very valid. I've experienced it. It does get lonely at the top. How do you see it, and what are the ways to embrace it and go through getting through that look? I mean, it's not just like having people company. I have good friends I can call. They'll talk to me for hours, no problem. It's not that. Lonely at the top is like, I'm sure you understand like better than anyone else.
I do. And I believe that part of that comes from ego there and just the fear of looking, or the fear of judgment.
Got it.
I've been there, and I have felt very lonely. I felt lonely at different times in my life, to the point where my life I really struggled personally. I believe this, though. I think that I'm a big believer, and I speak a lot about being vulnerable and authentic, and that vulnerability is a strength in leadership. I believe that I always say you don't have a right as a leader to emotionally vomit on your team and walk away. Like during the pandemic, I would lead oftentimes our meetings, and we'd do a feeling check-in, and oftentimes I'd lead it with, I'm very stressed. I'm scared right now. I have a lot of anxiety. I'm worried about my kid. I'm worried about my wife. I'm worried about my parents. I'm worried about this company. And I would say, and I want you to know that, because I'm a human being, and I'm worried about, the decisions we're making. I don't know if they're 100% right. However, I do know this. We always figure it out, and we'll figure it out. So I could share that I was feeling anxious. I could share that I had some insecurities around it, but I could also have the confidence to say, we will figure this out. And we always do. And I think that really helped. The other thing is, I found, and I didn't find this till later in my career, finding somebody who understands, who's been at a certain level in an organization. And there are a ton of us out there who are more than happy to have a coffee and a conversation with somebody. A lot of the time that I spend is actually with that, people calling me and saying, things at work are so hard, and I haven't taken a paycheck for 2 or 3 months because of one reason or another. My wife is so upset with me, and it's such a struggle at home. And I'm like, I've been there. I've slept on the couch because of my big mouth often, by, more times than I cared to admit. But I can understand and relate to that and say, I get it, and help them understand, because I had to learn the perspective from my wife at the time. And there are a lot of those people like us out there. My biggest thing was, I was afraid to reach out, not because there wasn't someone there, but because I had it in my head. I'm the CEO. I'm supposed to know this. I'm supposed to figure this out. And I was so afraid that if I called somebody up that was a peer or maybe bit higher with talking about that they would judge me negatively. And I found the exact opposite. And I learned that was a very hard lesson for me, because I learned that from after we sold SharePoint, and I had more money than I ever thought I would have, and a beautiful wife and kid, and close to my parents and sisters, great network of friends, successful business. 3 years after we sold the company, I ended up all alone, like living in a condo in downtown Edmonton, separated from my wife. And I woke up on a bathroom floor 10 or 11 weeks after moving into there with an overwhelming desire to end my life. And that that moment changed my life. It actually was the parallel. That moment is what made me the leader that I am today. And I believe that it had a major impact on why SharePoint survived during the forbearance period when I became the CEO, because I was forced to my knees on that bathroom floor. And I got up and I was starting to cry. And I looked in the mirror and I was like, I will not cry. I'm a man. I'm not going to cry. And I had made a commitment to myself when I was 21 years old or something that I was never going to have a breakdown again. And I was washing my face and my eyes caught my eyes and a thought hit me. Oh my God, what would I tell a friend if they told me they had the fancy acreage, the beautiful life, good son, close to parents, and all the money, and a sports car in the garage, had everything, successful business, but felt the way I felt? And I thought I would tell them to get help. I would say, I get it. Please don't give up. Please get help. And I ended up reaching out for help that day. And I randomly picked a life coach on the internet. And she got back to me within 30 minutes. I just sent an email, didn't even say anything crazy. And she responded back and said, I have a cancellation for tomorrow if you'd like it. And I took it and I went and saw her the next day. And I went in there playing the con. Here I am the day before and all day agonizing about, that I call it my moment of hell on earth. I was equally afraid to live and afraid to die. And I go in to see her and I sit down and I'm shaving and looking clean and looking good. And she says, how are you? And I say, I'm good. I'm good. And she says, what's going on? Well, my wife has kicked me out. My son's not talking to me. I might get kicked out of the business that I co-founded. Other than that, things are great. And she said, that doesn't sound very good. And back and forth for a while. And she said, you're not okay. And I'm worried about you. And then she said something that changed my life. She said, I am so worried about you and I can't help you. Please don't leave this office. She said, promise me you won't leave this office. I'm like, I won't leave. She said, I will be back in like 1 minute. So I stayed and she came down the hall and she brought a guy in with her, this man named Dr. Gons at Edmonton. And that man helped change my life. And I learned something from that experience, that I reached out for help and the help was there. And I was going to him for a little while and I was a few sessions in and I walked in one day and I sat down in his office and all he said to me was this, Trevor, how are you feeling? As soon as I walked in the office. And I said, how am I feeling? I said, I felt less than and insecure and inferior my entire life. I'm afraid of everything. I'm afraid of success and afraid of failure. I'm sad most of the time. And when I'm not sad, I'm numb, which is maybe worse. And I said, I'm lonely all the time. I'm lonely when I'm all alone. I'm lonelier when I'm with my friends and I'm loneliest when I'm with my family. And I don't know what the hell is wrong with me. And I thought for sure he was going to look me in the eye and tell me that I should be more positive and more grateful for all the things I have. And instead, this man looked at me and he went silent for a second. He looked me in the eye and he said, oh, man, I get it. And he said, thank you for being honest with me and thank you for being vulnerable. I know how hard that can be. And he later told me that if I'd have told him anything else, he wouldn't have believed it. But he caught me off guard by asking me how I feel. And I realized at that moment, nobody had ever asked me how I felt unless I'd been in the hospital or was sick. And I had never asked another human being. And that was 15 years ago or so. And I can tell you every single moment of that part of the conversation, what he was wearing, where he was sitting, where I was sitting, how he looked at me. And I left that day and my life changed. And when I became the CEO of SharePoint and we got put in forbearance and I woke up and said, this is a gift, I wasn't afraid to go and tell the team that I needed their help, that we were going to die. My best decisions had led me to a floor in a bathroom. I was 39 years old and my best decisions had put me there. When I tried to figure everything else on my own, I was going to die. And I realized if I try to figure this forbearance thing out on my own with SharePoint, we're going to die. And I just went in and told the truth. And it was a parallel.
I just took notes like where we're speaking, like something like, if you don't mind, I'm going to use it somewhere. It says like afraid to live and afraid to die. Afraid of success and afraid of failure. Wow. Yeah. I don't know, somewhere along the way, you've shared bits of it to me in the past. Like I could, man, like, what did the doctor tell you? And how was that process? Like, how did you show the light at the end of the tunnel? What was that process like, Trevor? I'm sure like many who's listening, who was going through something like this, afraid to live and afraid to die, afraid of failure and success. What was that process to get over it and get to the other side of the tunnel?
So lots of sessions with him, obviously. And when he asked that, I left there feeling different. I had finally told somebody the truth about how I felt. And I wasn't afraid. I was a farm kid and hockey player and climb mountains. And, I tell people, I've done all the guy stuff. I've done all that. I've been beat up in fights. Like I've done all of the guy stuff. But I also say now that I'm also a human being, and sometimes my wife hurts my feelings, and sometimes I'm sad, and sometimes I'm really, really happy, and sometimes I'm scared. And I believe that human beings, and especially men, we stuff our feelings so much, and what happens is we become numb. We become disconnected from our head to our heart. And I had a friend tell me one time that the longest journey you will ever take in your life is from your head to your heart. It's
Wow.
like a trip. And I was like, it took me 39 years to even get on that path. And so I was going to Dr. Gons. I went to him for a long time, and I ended up going to another session after that one where he asked me. Things really started to get real, and I really started to open up after I had told him how I felt. And one time I came in and he said to me, we had the session. When I was leaving, he said, at the next session, I want you to come in with a list of your priorities. And so he said, I want you to list them 1 to 100 or whatever it is. And so my wife and I had been separated, but we had reconciled. So I was back home. And so I had my wife, my son, my mom, my dad, my parents, my sisters, and in-laws and family and work. And then I had some stuff under work. And I go in and I hand him the list. And he says to me, yeah, that's a great list. I'm like, thank you. He said, interesting. Where are you at on it? And I said, well, I'm everywhere. Like, it's my list. And he said, okay, well, humor me. And he handed me a pen and he said, add yourself to the list. And so I put myself just above work. And the only reason I did, for full transparency, is because I knew that if I put myself below work, he'd call me out on it. So I'm like, I'm going to go above work, and then I'm going to get the gold star. So I put myself there and I hand it back to him. And he looks at it and he looks at me and he says, that's interesting. Why didn't you put yourself first? And I said, because I'm not a narcissist. Like, who would put themselves first? And he said, this is the problem with human beings. He said, very few put themselves on the list, and even fewer put themselves first. And I said, I totally get it. Like, I would never put myself first. And he said to me, have you ever saw a champagne glass pyramid? Like at a wedding where they stack them and they pour the champagne in the top glass and one bottle, and it overflows perfectly to fill all the glasses. I said, yeah. He said, have you ever saw them fill it from the bottom up? And I was like, no. He said, okay, I want you to close your eyes and visualize that. And we did a lot of that technique, and tell me what you see. So I closed my eyes and I was like, wow, you're going to need more than one bottle of champagne. It's going to be inefficient because it's going to spill all over. The glasses are going to be sticky. It's going to make a hell of a mess on the table. And he said, exactly. And Trevor, that's how you're living your life. He said, your priority list is your champagne glass pyramid. There's you, your wife and your son, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your family, your friends, work and all the stuff. He said, you're in here talking to me all the time about how you want to be more present and patient and courageous and kind and all of this stuff. And he said, you can't give what you don't have. You are trying and you've got the best of intentions, but you're trying to fill it from the bottom up and you're running out of champagne. And he gave me permission, and I coined this, he gave me permission to be selfishly selfless. It became an obligation of mine. He said, if you want to show up as the best version of yourself in the relationships that matter most, you have to be full of what you're full of will always overflow into your champagne glass pyramid. And he said, here's the thing. You have your own, your wife has hers, your son has his, your mom and your dad, your sisters. Every person has their champagne glass pyramid. But we wear selflessness as a badge of honor in our society. And for us, and for me, if you would have said, go do good things and go do things you love to do for you, I wouldn't have done it. When he said, go, if you truly care about all the things in the pyramid, and I know that you do, there's no question, go and start doing shit that's really good and healthy for you. Because when you're full of happiness and joy and bliss and love, that's what flows over. When you're full of anxiety, depression, sadness. And I also found out, for me, oftentimes my glass was so empty that I'm in everybody else's, and they have to work extra hard to try and fill mine up. So mine wasn't always anger and resentment and despair, but sometimes it was. And so I became an obligation for me. That's when I started hiking. I started doing these trips to climb Kilimanjaro and go to Peru. Some of the stuff my wife she does not want to sleep in a tent without a toilet and a shower anywhere, but she knows that it's really, really good for me. And she started to do things that she loves to do. And when we come together and we do things now, we have way more patience. Like when I go shopping with her, I don't like it, but I'm way more patient than I used to be because I've got enough of the, kindness and patience and stuff that I need to be able to go and at least not take value from her. So I use that analogy a lot with people, and it's helped change people's lives. And a lot of leaders, you spend so much time focused on your career, entrepreneurs and your business, that when you take time off, and this was a challenge with Renee at the beginning, I came home and told her, Dr. Gon said that I need to go and do some really fun stuff for me, and then I'll be better for you. So this weekend I was going to hang out with you on Sunday and go shopping, but I called a buddy on the way here and I'm going to go hiking with him instead. That was not a popular thing. Like, it caused a fight in our house. And she was like, so you spend zero time at home, you work all the time, and now the day that you're taking off, you're going to go hang out with a buddy? And I said, well, here's the thing, Renee, history will repeat itself. I'll come to the mall with you on Sunday, and in the first half hour, I'm going to be kind and patient, and I'm going to pack your bags around, and I'm going to be in the store, and the ladies are going to tell you what an awesome husband you have because I'm, smiling and carrying your shit. And about an hour and a half in between the stores, I'm like a 5-year-old child. I'm going to be like, this sucks. When can we go home? I'm hungry. But when I pop in the store, I'm going to smile again. By the time we leave there, we're going to be fighting. I'm probably going to be on the couch, and I'm going to ruin the thing that you love to do. I said, why don't you go with your sister? I will go hike with my buddy and I'll meet you. I'll just go for a couple hours. Let's try this. And I showed up that afternoon and it was remarkably different. I'm not going to oversell myself because she might see this, but I went in there and I didn't ruin her experience. I actually spent a couple hours with her, and I was like, oh my God, like, it's nice to spend some time with her and pack the bags and put them in the vehicle. We didn't fight. And that was my very first introduction to this. And so with me now, if I go too long without doing the hikes, the walks, spending a bit of time with friends, talking about some of the stuff that's going on in my head, I end up being, she notices, I end up being distracted and grouchy. And so she's like, get the hell out of here and go for a walk. So.
Right. I have a few rapid fire questions, but like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, when you're leading something, I think I've read one book from Robin Sharma. He's a great author I look up to. There was a book that he named it like a leader who has no title, right? I think everyone is also a leader in whatever they are doing. They can be leader in the community, leader in their department, whatever. So what are something that leaders should be doing, like going hiking or exercising, or what are the top 5 or 7 things that you think any leader should be doing besides work?
So, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I always say this: what is something that you love to do? Go and do that. And you don't have to start with taking 8 hours or 10 hours or a weekend. I often say, like, if you can't carve an hour a week out of your schedule, and then there's a problem. I think it was the Dalai Lama who said everybody should meditate for 5 minutes a day, unless you don't have time, and then you should meditate for an hour. And
does meditation help, actually, Trevor? I'm really curious. I'm trying a few things, but does meditation actually help?
So I'm a big fan of meditation. I don't do it nearly as consistently as I did. For a whole year, I meditated at least 5 minutes a day for an entire year, up to an hour. I do some. I will do, like, the way I meditate now has changed, that is sitting there quiet. I will do guided meditation, sometimes at night before I go to sleep. One of the things that I have found that works remarkably well, and I've interviewed a lot of people and spend a lot of with people who just seemingly crush their goals, and they just have these incredible lives, and they make a lot of money, and they have successful business. And the number one thing that I could tell you that probably 90% of them do is manifest. They do vision board, they write it down, they think about it in a certain way. If they take time, you can call it meditation or not, but they think about the outcome, and they feel what it feels like to have it and for it to be successful. That takes time, and there's a strategy and a structure to it. Positivity helps a lot. But when it comes to, you're going to start to fill yourself up, which that's actually the beginning of all of this. It is, what is something that you loved to do? I didn't even know what I loved to do anymore. I was a hockey player and I loved sports. So I tried getting back into that and found out it didn't fill me up the way it used to. For one thing, the games were at like 11 o'clock at night. I wasn't getting to bed till 1 a.m. and I wasn't getting as much joy as I thought I would. But when I started hiking and getting out in nature, I fell in love with it. And I say, take an hour. I say this to mothers who come to me and when I talk about this stuff and to wives, and I'm like, what would happen if you took an hour for you? Maybe that's to go to a library and read a book. Maybe it's to sit and just have a coffee. Maybe it's to call a friend And so for me, every Sunday, I go with a running group, then go for coffee after. Or if that doesn't work out, I hang out with a buddy or some friends and go for sometimes a 10-minute walk and a coffee. And I try and incorporate that. And so for 1 or 2 hours a week, I've got it scheduled into so that I get that bit of fill up. And so I say, I started with a list, like, okay, I'm going to play hockey. So I joined a rec team, and a drop-in rec team was like, I'm in badminton, and I was all sports related. I have found now that a 10-minute walk or a 20-minute walk in the River Valley in Edmonton will reset me. And I'll be like, oh, like nature helps me a lot. So I think it's very specific to individuals. It starts with carving out the time and scheduling it and saying on this day. And I know some leaders who do this through the week. They take an hour a day and they disconnect. They shut off their phones and they'll meditate, or they'll go for a walk, or they'll go in the creativity that they have. And they say that it makes them so much more efficient. And I think the benefit of all of it, the number one benefit, I know the number one benefit is that you feel better. We're all on this mission to go and crush it in our lives and make so much money and build these empires and do this stuff and travel around the world and buy an airplane, do all this stuff. We often forget that this thing ends for all of us the exact same way. And in this rush and this passion and this crazy ambition to achieve so much stuff that's almost always material, that we often forget that the most important thing is ourselves, and to feel some peace, some contentment, and some joy. And I'm like, people that I know that are hitting these high levels of success in their businesses and in their lives, and have a relative balanced amount of peace and contentment, they are manifesting and meditating, all of them.
Got it. I know we have like a hard stop. I have a few rapid fire questions. I'll get it out.
I got a few minutes past, so we
okay.
Go
okay. Okay, perfect. So here's a rapid fire section. You can go with a few words or a short phrase, right? So what's one value? What is that one value that you won't compromise on as a human being, as a leader?
Integrity.
Got it. Culture or strategy? What moves first?
Culture, all the time.
What's a leadership skill that you rely on daily?
A leadership skill, a vulnerability.
You rely on daily.
Vulnerability.
God, what's the best advice you have ever received?
Oh my God. Actually, when I had a mentor tell me, he used the phrase on me this, I was working on some stuff, and he said, emotionally and trying to do this personal development and growth. And he said to me, Trevor, I have good news for you. You no longer have to suffer from terminal uniqueness. And I was like, ouch. And he said, you have a different wife, you have different voice, different color hair, different height. You look different, sound different, drive a different car. But at an emotional level, when you come in here and you talk about how you're feeling, you're angry, sad, depressed, happy, anxious. He said, at an emotional level, every human being is exactly the same. And when I went out and I proved that without a doubt, because I did a series of things, I talked to people all over the world. The poorest person I could find on Mount Kilimanjaro and the richest person I know who's a billionaire. And I asked them all the same questions. They answered them exactly the same. And they were emotional questions. And when I realized that was the thing, that was the best advice I ever had. I no longer had to feel like I was so different, better or worse, or that I shouldn't feel this way because I'm a leader, and because I have money, and because I have this successful company, and because I'm a CEO, and because of all these things. I believed that people would never understand. I didn't come out and tell people I was sad and scared and feeling inferior, because I didn't think they would understand because of all of this stuff. And I found out that they absolutely understand. If I tell you that I'm sad, you don't even have to know why. You can relate to that. And that's the best advice, I think. I mean, there's so many, but that's the one that popped into my head right now. So I'll go with that.
That's beautiful, actually. I kind of know the answer, but I'll still ask you, people or performance, what comes first? I kind of know the answer.
Yeah. And so they're both so important, but if you want to get the highest level of performance, invest in your people. And here's the thing, I say Karen's a competitive advantage, and I got like that doesn't come across very well sometimes with people, and it sounds soft. And I didn't really know how to make it have meat in the corporate world, so to say. I've come to realize that caring is the foundation for accountability. Because if you actually care about each other as a team, it means you're going to do the shit that you promise you'll do. You will show up If I care about you and you ask me to show up to help you move a couch on Sunday, I'm going to show up to help you move a couch on Sunday. And so it's actually the foundation for it. And so performance has to be a high priority in an organization, especially if you want to be successful long term. I believe that you get the best performance by treating your people really, really well, and then holding them accountable. And actually, it's impossible for you to hold me accountable. I believe that accountability comes from caring, and that when you have the right structure. So yeah, people, because it improves performance.
What does ownership mean to you in a single word or sentence?
Well, ownership is about showing up. There's a sense of pride that comes with ownership, but ownership is showing up. It's not just an investment. And ownership means different things to different people. When we rolled out the employee ownership model, some people wanted it because it came with some status. Some wanted it because they're just so proud to be an owner. Some people wanted it because they actually were like, hey, I think I can make a whole bunch of money. And some people wanted it for all those reasons. But there's a feeling. Ownership comes with a feeling that's just hard. If somebody's never been an owner, if you've never gone, and you're very entrepreneurial. And so you'll get this. Ownership is a feeling. And when you actually get it right, and you're like, oh my God, my proudest moments have been like, I can't believe I own this thing. The thing I owned was nothing at the time. Like there was nothing. When I started Matrix, I didn't even have an invoice done. And I had this piece of paper and a logo. And I was like, I own this company. It is incredible. So ownership is a feeling.
Got it. Is there a book or an idea that moved you or changed your life completely? Or maybe it is that doctor. I don't know. Like, is there a book or an idea that you keep going back to?
So I go back to a lot of organizations that I work with, and I tell them, if you want to go with a people-centric, employee-owned model, read The Great Game of Business. It's an incredible book. Simon Sinek. I mean, you can start with Why in the Infinite Game. Those two. I read them after we'd been in this a long time, doing what we're doing, and I was leading the way I was. And I remember during the pandemic, I was listening to him on audio, and it was like, oh my God, he just put a framework and articulated everything that we've been trying to do. And we went all in, and we had already gone all in on purpose we care to empower people and improve lives. And that's what it was. We did instrumentation and electrical, and I'd say we're good at that. Arguably is better than our competitors most of the time. I said, but what really drives us, the reason we exist is to empower people and improve lives. And we built an empire off of that. So those are the ones that really, the success principles, Jack Canfield, Think and Grow Rich. I haven't read that one yet, but I am going to. I'm just starting to. And it is like, from everything I've ever read, that's a game changer for people.
Yeah. What's one thing that every leader should start doing tomorrow? What's one thing? Yeah. No, there's no negotiation on it.
Put an hour in your calendar to go and figure out something that you love to do that fills you up with.
Like every day or a week? Or every week?
Every week. Yeah. Sorry. An hour a week. Put an hour a week in your calendar, and it's a non-negotiable. And even when it's awkward, because it's going to be, go and do something you love to do, and don't answer the emails and don't answer the phone calls for work, and don't do the stuff for 1 hour a week. It will change your life.
Probably the last question, Trev. What do you want to leave people with? Is there a word or an advice that you want to leave people with? What do you want to say to all of them listening?
It sounds soft, but I believe this. The world will be better when we learn to love ourselves more. And I mean that into the deepest parts of my heart and soul. I say most of us spend the majority of our time, even as leaders, beating ourselves up, looking at our faults, things we didn't do, the investments we made that didn't work out, the things we said that we wished we hadn't. We look at our failures more than our successes. And I also say that I believe that you can only love others to the capacity that you love yourself. And you'll be a better leader. Your organization will be stronger, and the communities you're in will be stronger, and the world will be stronger if we learn to love ourselves more.
Beautiful. Trevor, my friend, thank you so much. I learned so much, actually. I mean, some of these conversations are beyond therapeutic. I've never been to a therapist, but some of these conversations are actually therapeutic. People, when I've heard only one other person say that also, but I really do believe that, and I learned so much. Thank you for being an awesome guest in Pathfinders today. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for your time again.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on here. I really appreciate it, and you're an awesome guy, and I'm glad I got to know you. And this was a hoot, and I got a lot out of it too. So thank you.
Cheers. Bye.